Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Escape to the Quarter Bin. As always, I am your host, Adrian Johnson. First off, we have Apache Skies. This is issue 1 of 4 from Marvel Comics from their Max Comics imprint. I believe from the early 2000s, maybe like 2002, 2003, thereabouts. Let's see what the cover date is. Oh, and as you can see, explicit content. Let's see, cover dated. Okay, there we go. Cover dated September of 2002, and I picked this one up because, when I was younger, I was not a big fan of westerns, not at all. But I do remember this series coming out. And in fact, there was a previous series that came out from this team. I forgot to mention. The creative team on this book is writer John Ostrander of Suicide Squad fame, amongst many other credits, and Leonardo Manco. Ostrander and Manco had actually done a prior series with these characters in 2000, if I'm remembering that correctly. It was called Blaze of Glory, and it featured a lot of the classic Marvel Western characters, like Two Gun Kid, Gunhawk, several others. And as I mentioned, Manco drew that series, but here, God, look at the illustration on this. This is so fantastic. Oh my goodness. Look at this. Man, let me go back to the previous pages. Yeah, I knew Manco from some of his Valiant work. And he was known for doing, and he had been in the industry, if I'm not mistaken, he had been in the industry since like the mid-90s, like mid to late 90s. And he was always put onto books that had more of a horror type bent. Like I believe he worked for Valiant and he worked on Shadow Man for them. And then he was picked up at Marvel and they put him on to Werewolf by Night because they brought that series back for a little bit. But nothing like the illustration that's going on here. This is him, really embracing those his European, influences. Man, God, this is gorgeous stuff. Oh, man. The previous series, Blaze of Glory, that was more pen and ink. But this is where Marvel and DC were coming out of a period of using, like, very cheap colorists, So their books were very muddy looking, like very brown, just not very well colored. I'll just leave it at that. But here, this is lush, and this is like gorgeous. Look at this, man. So painterly. God, man. God, this is fantastic, man. I feel terrible because I remember this series coming out. I was working in a comic shop at the time, but I didn't pay it any attention. I think probably because I was still on a kick of, I'll just go towards more of the really, really mainstream titles. But this here, man, God. This hits the spot. Gorgeous. I'm not sure what Manco is doing recently, but man, if it's still like work of this caliber, and you got to imagine when you look up his work from Blaze of Glory and Shadow Man and Werewolf by Night, and you see, kind of like he stepped it up, going into Apache Skies. It's quite a leap. It's quite a shift. Just absolutely fantastic. Wow. And I ended up, at the time I picked this issue up out of the bins, there were, I believe, 2 other issues in there. I think issues 2 and 3. So I'm still on the hunt for issue 4, so I can close out, this particular miniseries. But again, looking like this, oh my goodness, this is gonna be one that I'm going to enjoy, finishing up, once I get a chance. Oh man. Man, just beautiful. Just beautiful. So yeah, definitely check out Apache Skies and hunt down the other series prior to this that leads into this, the earlier series called Blaze of Glory. Definitely, I'm going to recommend those. Yeah, this is beautiful. Next up, we have Image Plus from May of 1993. Now, this is the type of book that Image would actually do quite a few of, in a sense of, with the formation of Image, this is like the first time that that comic creators, in particular, comic artists, were really treated like, real superstars. I mean, yes, you had, stars of the industry before, but nothing to where like you would want to know, details about, their somewhat, personal life, like they were like stars, you know what I'm saying? Which they were, to us at the time. And especially myself being like an Image kid, you know what I mean? But, you had, stuff like, they would have like, bios of them, paragraphs about, hey, how did they get into the industry, their bibliography and everything. And I really ate this stuff up, because this was one of the few places pre-dawn of internet, that you could get details like this. And, I know I was insatiable just trying to find out more about, just all of this type of stuff. You know what I'm saying? And the cool thing about this is that all of these illustrations, all of these caricatures were done by a young J. Scott Campbell, who had just joined Image, around this time. Maybe, I want to say early 1993, maybe late 92, but he was definitely in there. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, Campbell was definitely known for doing these caricatures, You got Jim Lee. And this is who Campbell worked for, of course, for Jim Lee. So it makes sense that he would do these different caricatures. And I think he did more caricatures as well. Like he was kind of the go-to. Eric Larson, Jim Valentino. But yeah, these are very reminiscent of Mort Drucker, the caricaturist Mort Drucker from Mad Magazine fame. You can tell that that's one of his earliest influences. Silvestri. Will Spertasio. And then he doesn't have, Campbell stops doing the caricatures past the 7 founders. So then after that, you have these bios of like various, various guys working with the in the various studios, like Brett Booth. Look at this. Image Fan Club. You can win dinner for 2 with Spawn creator Todd McFarlane. I wonder if anybody won that. Oh man, that'd be cool, I guess. Okay, and then J. Scott Campbell himself. And I thought what was cool is that you can tell not only by looking at the birth date of these guys, but you can tell how young some of these guys are just by reading their bios and seeing what they enjoyed. You know what I'm saying? Like Like here, J. Scott Campbell says that he loves pizza and fruit gushers. You know, you can tell that he's still a fairly young dude. You know what I'm saying? And which a lot of these guys were. You know. So you got Joe Chido, Scott Clark, Dan Fraga, Alex Garner. Oh man, I think Marat Michaels is somewhere in here probably. Okay, the late Keith Giffen. Rest in peace. Mike Grell, Mike Heisler, Dale Keown. There we go, Marat Michaels. Down with the Extreme Crew, and Danny Mickey, also of the Extreme Crew. And Brian Murray, also, with the Extreme Crew, and the great Tom Orzechowski, lettering fame with the Claremont Byrne Austin, Uncanny X-Men, amongst others. And in fact, I think he had a font created of his lettering because it was so distinctive. Because I remember back in, I want to say, the mid-90s, there was a computer program that he made himself of his font, and he was using it to letter manga. I remember seeing it on like Appleseed, maybe. Masamune Shiro's Appleseed when it was being translated over here, and maybe Dominion also. And the program is called PC ORZ, O-R-Z, PC ORZ. And that was his own program that he made, I guess, to start digital lettering, really before Richard Starkings and Comic Craft took over. But beyond that, I know his name from working with the Byrne, Austin, Claremont X-Men, and he did the lettering on Todd McFarlane's work as well with Spawn, when the early issues of Spawn. Orzechowski, he doesn't get enough credit, doesn't get his flowers. And Norm Rapman, Extreme Inker, Scott Williams, Wildstorm Inker, long time Jim Lee Inker, of course. And then lastly, Chance Wolfe, who did a lot of work with Jim Valentino. I think he did some work with McFarlane as well, mostly as an anchor and a letterer. Oh, no, not McFarlane. Dale Keown. So yeah. But yeah, Image Plus, I picked this up because it was like a blast from the past. It's definitely something that I ate up as a 13-year-old. All right, next up, cover dated November 1997. It's Cable number 48, written by James Robinson and drawn by Jose Ladronn, later known as just Ladronn, and inked by Juan Velasco. This was my introduction to Ladronn's work back in the... When did I come across this work? I want to say I came across this work maybe in the early 2000s. I had gotten some stray issues of this Cable run out of the bin, and I just fell in love with it. He had also done when Marvel and DC had a crossover called Amalgam. He had also drawn a book called Spider-Boy Team Up. But yeah, this Cable run is one of my favorites, because in the late 90s, it was, the industry was going through a downturn post-Image, and, for lack of, trying to find what was going to be the new direction, and in that regard, it was kind of wide open. You started having the influx of, younger artists, taking the influence of manga and kind of, putting elements of that in their work, such as, Joe Madureira, coming in with that, and other, mostly post-Image, a lot of those younger artists, taking that influence. But amongst them, you have Jose Ladronn, who was also taking the influence of not only manga, but he was also bringing in the influence of Kirby, European influences with Mobius, and he was kind of filtering them through this particular lens that just clicked. They just clicked, man. But all of those influences are right in there. You can see them. They're prevalent. You know what I'm saying? And Cable was a book that, you know, was not super popular at this time. You know, I mean, it was an X-Men book. However, at the same time, it was still very much, you know, a book that really nobody was checking for, you know, too heavy. You know, at least I wasn't, you know, at that time. But once this, you know, really, you know, starts or whatnot, it kind of, you know, really gained a cult following, you know, and it just works. It just works. Man, I mean, this is so cool. I mean, it's action packed, and you can, like I mentioned, you can see the influence of, you know, manga here. You know, it looks like a Kirby with manga with the speed lines, you know, and the detail, you know, really has that European sensibility, you know. So all of that is at work here. And again, just, man, this is just very cool stuff. Very cool stuff. And this and Ladronn, you know, this Cable run went from, I believe, issue number 46, maybe 46 or 47 through issue 69. No, through 70. That's what it was. And there were some great stories in the midst of that. There were some great story arcs with once Joe Casey takes over. You know, there were some great story arcs, you know, in the late 50s, the issues of the late 50s going into, like, you know, throughout the 60s. Just really cool stuff. But yeah, I picked this up because I've had this run several times, you know, and I know one time I gave the run away to a friend who had never read it. I was like, hey, you gotta check this out, you know, and I didn't get it back because, you know, I gifted it to him. And another time, I actually sold my run as well. If I'm not mistaken, there are a couple of paperbacks that collect, you know, these Ladronn issues, you know, and I've been wanting to get those, you know, but I kind of like having the single issues. That way I can kind of cherry pick exactly, you know, the ones I wanted, because this is definitely, you know, something that I would want bound, you know. I want to make a bound copy of my own. But Ladronn, he went on from this and Spider-Boy to really becoming a fantastic artist, you know, in his own right, and really ended up embracing more of that European tradition, you know, if you will. He is a Mexican artist, but, you know, had no one told me, I would have just thought that he was, you know, definitely European, maybe even Spanish, you know. But yeah, he went on from this to doing, like, I believe he did an Inhumans miniseries that was fully illustrated, you know, very much in the tradition of the previous book, Apache Skies, that I showed you. And he's been a cover artist, and he's worked with Alejandro Jodorowsky, you know, for Humanoids, illustrating projects over there. In particular, he had done the conclusion of the Incal story called Final Incal, amongst other things there. So Ladronn has really went on to, you know, become quite the illustrator in his own right, and I'm there for it. Anything that he does, I will definitely check it out. But it all started here with Cable. All right, and rounding out the episode, we have Hybrid #1 from Continuity Comics. Now, this book here, why I picked this up is you can just take a look at it and just see how garish it is, you know. And it has all the hallmarks. I mean, this high register coloring, the die cut cover, just all of that is working for it. But the main reason why I picked this particular book up is the art team, who will become synonymous, for working together over the next few years after this issue. And the art team for this is Aron Wiesenfeld, one of my all-time favorites, and Richard Bennett. And the cover apparently is by Wiesenfeld and Neil Adams. And you can obviously see the Neil Adams, inking, just prevalent. But Wiesenfeld and Bennett are one of those teams that don't get enough credit. Now, I've covered, Wiesenfeld on another series on this channel for my Blurted Out series, and I covered his comics art in the 90s, and he and Bennett actually went on to get a lot of acclaim, and rightfully so, for their 2-issue miniseries, Deathblow Wolverine, in the late 90s. I want to say about 96, but Bennett and Wiesenfeld, were a fantastic team. You have Wiesenfeld doing the pencils, and then Bennett coming over with his inks over top of that. And this is one of the earliest collaborations that they had, when they were both working for Neil Adams over at Continuity. But I believe they went over to Wildstorm. They were cherry-picked to go over to Wildstorm and work with Jim Lee. And they had a book over there that the two of them worked on called Brass in the mid-90s. In the mid-90s, that was, next level type of work. And that's mostly due to Bennett's, illustrations. I think Wiesenfeld wrote it. He may have done some layouts on it, but I think primarily that was Wiesenfeld. That was primarily Bennett on doing illustrations for Brass, even though they were both involved. That Brass was something else. And the same inking you can see here really made Bennett a favorite in the X offices, in the early 90s too. Just very detailed. He really, handled like tech and machinery with aplomb. Like his inking was just tailor-made for that. You know what I'm saying? And you can see like Wiesenfeld really getting his sea legs, with drawing comics here. And again, you can see why Wiesenfeld quickly grew into being one of the stars, perhaps even a reluctant star, of the early 90s, once he went over to Wildstorm. But, you can really see everything starting to coalesce here. Like, this stuff is just, it's getting there. It's right there. This right here is a telltale of Wiesenfeld. Like, that's one of the things that you can tell about Wiesenfeld. Like, he had these kind of I hate to say wonky type faces, but every once in a while you have a face that's like, yeah, that's a Wiesenfeld face. You know what I'm saying? Very distinctive. And this particular crossover, this Death Watch 2000, I have no idea. Like, I have several other issues, dealing with this crossover, but I have no idea of what the story is about. None. But, it's just cool to look at, and I guess sometimes you need that. Oh, man. See, this is what I was talking about earlier with Bennett being so adroit at drawing, tech and machinery and everything. This is all Bennett. This is, man, This is fantastic. And today, Richard Bennett is a renowned storyboard artist for Hollywood. I think he is, well, I know he is online. You can check out his work there, and you can still see that he is all about drawing the machinery and everything. And he's starting to put up um, pics of like his black and white line art from back in the 90s. What I wouldn't give to get like, copies of that stuff, you know what I'm saying, up close or full size. If there's someone that needs like an artist edition or something like that, it would be like, Richard Bennett and his work, from back then. I mean, just killer. And of course you have, Aron Wiesenfeld, he's gone on to, obviously do, great comics, but now he is more known as a fine artist. Both of these guys, they went on to greater accolades within their particular pursuits. Valeria. This I remember Valeria was supposed to be hot, and I do remember there was supposed to be a crossover with Spawn, but I'm trying to think, did that ever come to pass? I don't think so, because I think Valeria ended up having her own miniseries when continuity went over to, and I forget how this worked, but they had a deal with Valiant Comics because Valiant Comics had an imprint called Windjammer, and there were several, characters from continuity that went over to Windjammer and got, issues done there, and that's what I remember as far as Valeria. But beyond that, haven't seen any, any sign of, the character since. So it might have just been her last claim to fame. So they even made a big deal about this, in terms of Spawn and Valeria crossing over. But I don't think they ever did, at least not in, issues of Spawn itself. So, but beyond that, that is definitely, an example of, a blast from the 90s, but it's early work from the team of Aron Wiesenfeld and Richard Bennett. All right, guys, that is all I got for this episode. Thank you, as always, for checking me out. And hey, if you like what you see here, please like, share, and subscribe. And this is the Inazuma Studios channel here on YouTube. And also, if you want to support the channel, please feel free to check out my Patreon. That's patreon.com/Inazuma Studios. And as always, I'm your host, Adrian Johnson. And you guys take care of yourselves. Peace.